Hello and welcome to Word Thought Deed with me, Steve Denton. My guest this week is an old friend of mine, Gareth. Hello, sir.
Hello, Steve.
And Gareth, you're from a little Welsh town called Caerphilly, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah,
Famous for what? Tommy Cooper?
we got Tommy Cooper, we got Castle, uh,
Yes.
we got
Cheese?
Cheese, and of course a notorious Sex Pistols concert. Uh,
Absolutely. 1976. We're going back a
yeah,
bit there. Yeah, yeah. And we
yeah,
were actually alive at that time.
yeah.
Not that I was there, but
No, I was 11 years old, but I know loads of people who went.
okay,
Yeah,
nice. Yeah, what an experience that must have been.
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah. I mean, I've seen, all the photos are great, and but
Yeah,
it was documented, wasn't it? Um, there was a carol session or a carol singing
yeah,
session
yeah,
outside the gig, organised by I think the local Methodist church, and that was kind of funny.
yeah. And strange enough, I was talking to some American girl, young girl,
Yeah,
recently on Threads, I think it is, and she was saying that Jesus is punk. And I said, well, she didn't know much about the gig that you just mentioned. I said, well, if you say that, like when the Sex Pistols came to Caerphilly, all the Christians were outside protesting against it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it changed the world in a
Oh
way,
no, yeah,
didn't
of
it?
course it did. But I mean, I used to go to chapel in Tonavellin, which is not far from where the gig was, and I remember the Sunday, our minister, the brilliant Denzel John, um, got mentioned it in his Sunday sermon, and saying, "Look, who are we to judge the young people?"
Wow, yeah.
And he had nothing to do with this united sort of churches of Caerphilly protest the
Okay,
Sex Pistols.
right, yeah,
I just thought it was hilarious,
yeah,
and I thought, blimey, grown-ups get really annoyed about pop music. This is the line I'm going to say, because before that, I wasn't particularly into pop music. If you look at the charts in 1976, and there was nothing really that was particularly exciting for
no,
but I guess I was just coming to that age. I was 11, 12 years old. I think I was 12 just after the game. It was,
yeah,
and yeah, and music and stuff became really important to me then, and I'm sure that was something to do with the reaction the Sex Pistols
okay.
caused. And I loved punk. You're wearing your
A
Clash
Clash,
T-shirt, and
yeah,
they were my band. I had all their singles when they were coming out.
yeah,
I think I had two copies of Clash City Rockers, and I know I've got two copies of White Man in Hammersmith Palais
fantastic.
in my record box upstairs. Um, and I think, much as I love the Sex Pistols, I think the Clash are really one of the greatest bands ever. Up there with the Who,
Definitely,
or
no doubt about it.
even the Beatles or the Stones. I mean, the Clash are just brilliant.
There's a saying, isn't there, that punk made you want to bang your head against the wall, but the Clash gave you a reason to do it. Have you heard that?
Superb, superb.
Yeah, so they were actually singing about something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it was
indeed.
less nihilism than the Pistols, although it was fun, the nihilism, and I genuinely think that. Go, what's he on about now? Just and you see him now, Johnny Lydon. He likes to get the rise out of people, you know, and he's a contrarian, isn't he? He'll just say stuff that just gets people's
Yeah,
backs up, and he
absolutely.
was doing that as a young kid, and he's still doing it as an old
Yeah,
man, and um, yeah, but I think there was something about the Clash which you want to be mates with them. You want to listen to what they had to say.
they were so down to earth, weren't they?
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a typical kind of. They wanted to. I actually saw a video of them last night on an American TV show when they went over there to play, and Simonon was saying that uh, they did not have to be famous and hide from people. He said back in London we could just walk the streets,
yeah,
and it's no big deal,
yeah.
Now we'll come to fame after, of course, because it's something you know a bit
Oh
about. But
gosh.
that music. It brought me and you together, right, as friends. That's when I met you in
Yeah, sure. I
about
mean,
43 years ago.
yeah. I mean, I'm a bit. I was a bit too young to really participate in the punk scene as so. I mean, I'd buy the records, And then once I was about 14, I started going to gigs. So I did go and see bands like the UK Subs and,
Yeah.
that wave.
Yeah.
999 I thought were excellent, a hugely underrated band.
Yeah.
I remember seeing them. But the 999, the reason I never saw the Clash live, because the Clash playing the night after them in Sophia Gardens in Cardiff. 999 had played the night before in the Top Rank in Queen Street in Cardiff. And I wanted to, but I bought tickets for 999 because I liked them, and me and my mate Sean went to see them. We were really excited about this, but I wanted to go and see the Clash the night after. And because I lived in Caerphilly, I needed a lift home, and my dad was cool about coming to pick us up.
Wow.
But he said, "I'm not doing 2 nights on a run."
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, come on." He says, "No." So
Oh.
in the afternoon, I walked over to Sophia Gardens. I saw the trucks arrive, and I was like, "Oh, it's not going to happen, is it?" And I didn't go and see the Clash. And that's one of my big regrets.
Yeah, same.
Not that I don't regret seeing 999 because they were
No,
excellent.
no, that's really good.
But they're not icons like
No.
the Clash.
Yeah, I get it.
And to see a classic Clash lineup with Mick and Joe
Yeah.
and Paul. I don't know who was drumming for them then, but
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen the Clash, but I've seen 3 of them in individual bands like
Yeah.
BAD and I
I
saw
saw BAD loads.
yeah, really good bands. And Simon was in Havana 3 AM.
Oh right.
So
yeah.
I saw them in London.
Yeah.
They were good as well. They didn't last long in my mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the time me and you met in a pub called the Lexington.
Yeah, the Lexington. The punk pub.
Fantastic place,
It was
right?
brilliant.
Bigger joint upstairs
Yeah.
and a pub downstairs full
What's-
of punks and a great jukebox, if I remember.
Yeah.
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 Not
Early
there
80s,
anymore.
I think. No, gosh, all that pub has been knocked down, which is a real shame. I do walking tours of Cardiff, concentrating on the music scene,
Yeah.
and I take people to the Capitol Centre. They go, "What are we
Yeah.
doing here?" I go, "Well, the Capitol Theatre
Yeah.
was here, and this is where the Beatles played their last UK gig."
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, before they went off to America and did
Oh, I
that
didn't
tour where
know
they
that.
did Shea Stadium. I never liked the Beatles as a kid, much, apart from the kiddie stuff like Yellow Submarine and Obladi Oblada. But as a grown up, as I think in my 20s and 30s, I went, "Oh, no, they're brilliant." The Kinks nearly split up, and I really liked the Kinks when I was a kid because they sounded more like a punk band.
Yeah, they
Certainly,
were great. Yeah.
but they nearly broke up, and I think Dave Davis, and I can't remember the name of the drummer, had a massive fight. The drummer threw a cymbal at Dave Davis
On stage.
and ran away because there was blood everywhere. He thought he'd killed him.
Oh,
And he
jeez.
runs off the stage of the Capitol. Somebody has to come on stage and say, "Gig's over." And I mean, they'd had a big hit. They were and yeah, and so I take him there. Just and Jimi Hendrix played there twice. Stevie Wonder played there. The Motown people all played there, and we used to go to a pub underneath there called the Lexington, which had the best jukebox ever. This
Right.
was, I guess, I first went there about 1981, and I was probably underage drinking then, but I went there because it had an amazing jukebox, and there were like loads of people who looked a bit different than people
That's
looked up the
right,
valleys.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was the Cramps, Cabaret Voltaire, and everything in between. There's reggae on there. Dillinger was on it, and these records still sound amazing now.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but me and Andy used to go around in a dinner time, round the pub, collecting 10 pences off people, going down Virgin, what was the shop? HMV or whatever it was, buying the latest single and putting it in the jukebox. So that jukebox was like pub owned, wasn't it? As such?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'd say, well, what single do you want in there? And we'd collect the money and go and buy it and actually put it in the jukebox.
Wow.
And it had a Space Invader. Do you remember that? Which was quite a novelty at the time. A little table. The table when me and Andy used to hog
booths,
it.
I remember. There were booths in.
Booths, yeah.
And, you could sit around with your mates and go from booth to booth and, chat girls up or have a...
That's right. And small place, wasn't it, really?
It was really small.
Were you there the night of the King Kirk gig?
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most memorable nights.
Well, we
few
all went down
eggs
to
and
New Ocean
flour
Club.
going around.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't leave the place clean, did we? In fact, we couldn't get in a taxi, if I remember, to get to the gig itself.
Hilarious. There was there was a big psychobilly. That was the thing in Cardiff. I mean, you know, with Ant and Dick and the Demented Outgo
Yeah, right.
lot.
Yeah.
So we you know, and were they supporting the King Kurtz and
I don't remember that, but they did a lot of gigs themselves, didn't they?
yeah.
Down.
Well, yeah, they you
I
know,
remember when in Paradise Garage. Remember that
Mark.
place in the
Yeah,
basement
yeah.
one night?
Right, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I was at that, and we all kind of spilled out of there about midnight or something into St Mary Street, which was in those days it wasn't a paved area; it was a
Yeah,
road.
yeah.
Um, anyway, that's another story.
Brilliant. But music was a big thing. Certainly
Yeah,
that kind of you know, post-punk, you know, whatever, you know, and everybody, you know, there was goths, psychobillies,
yeah,
skinheads, but the skins would mainly go to the Casa Gill.
Gill,
But
yeah.
there was a great skinhead scene in Cardiff, who were kept in check by the sharp lot, who were the skinheads against racial prejudice, which I was approved of. I thought, oh, good, skinheads in Cardiff are not that scary. Although they like to rock, you know, they because and Rastas, I did Cardiff had a brilliant reggae scene which I really liked.
Right.
Because as well as seeing punk bands in the top rank, I'd go and see reggae bands quite a lot.
Oh, which ones do you see?
I saw Black Uhuru.
Oh,
I
lucky
saw
you.
Gregor Isaacs. I saw in the
I'm not
Sophia
jealous,
Gardens.
you.
Aswad,
Oh,
who were amazing.
yeah.
And then down the Buttetown Carnival, you'd see, you know, bands down there. There were local bands like Black Roots. So, you know, and it was a great time for reggae. It was before the digital reggae thing really happened.
Yeah.
There were sound systems blasting out this stuff. And I know people from the docks from that period I'm still mates with and you know, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean those bands are still going. A lot of them. I've seen Steel Pulse and Misty and Roots in the
Yeah.
last few
I saw
years a
Steel
few
Pulse
times.
in
They're fantastic.
Ireland, supporting U2 and Simple
Oh,
Minds.
really?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I saw, I mean, Aswad were amazing live.
Mm.
They really were, before they had those big pop hits, but they were a real fantastic British reggae band.
Yeah.
You know, you see them, what's the film? Not Rockers. There might be Rockers. I mean, one of the big reggae films. Brinsley Ford's plays one of the leads in it, and he was in the Double Deckers. You know, he was an actor
Right, I
and
remember
in a
that.
band,
Yeah.
and I really liked that. I went, oh, maybe I could be an actor as well, like Brinsley Ford or David Bowie or whatever.
Right. Okay. Okay. Now, on a more serious note,
Okay.
just before all that kicked off in school, you had a bit of an experience, didn't
Yeah,
you?
sure. It was yeah. I mean, I mean, I like drama in school,
Right.
not drama. The subject. I was
Yeah.
an actor, and I was a professional actor for about 25, 30 years after leaving school. But yeah, but we had a notorious drama teacher who was abusive, and I won't go into any details, but you know, it was yeah, he was incredibly inappropriate, and he groomed me, and and there was this, and he'd coach me on sort of doing speeches and that, and he was very kind of let me see, he was he was looked up to, but he, you know, he's like, and he, after a while, I stayed at his house, and of course, when I stayed at his house, well, you know,
How did you end up in this house?
oh, come on, you need to rehearse this speech. I want to go to drama school, and I'm looking at places. But, you know, when I'm 16, 17, and yeah, so he, you know, uh, I mean, we went through a whole, in the early 2000s. I had some other guys contact me, said, "Did anything inappropriate happen with you?" I says, "Why?" did anything happen with you? He said, yeah. And a bunch of us who were all pretty successful adults,
Mm.
working in drama and creative stuff. And did anything happen with you? I says, look, yeah. And this was, he called me at midnight, friend of mine. You don't call people at midnight. I says, I'll come around yours now. I got out of bed and went round to his house. And we sat there with a bottle of whiskey. We talked. And
When you were what, 16 or
no,
something?
no, this was when I was in 35, 36.
Oh, right. Okay.
So this is 20 years later.
Yeah.
What happened to you then? And we talked about it. I said, well, so if it happened to both of us, then it must have happened to other people.
Right. Okay.
So we got together,
Right.
4 of us. And we were like, well, we're going to have to go to the police then, aren't we? Because, he might still be doing it. He was producing a TV show, very popular on S4C, about school kids. And
Wow.
I'd worked on this. I'd worked
Yeah.
on the first series of it,
Yeah.
because, and gradually I thought, you came to the realization I wasn't the special one. I was just a victim.
Yeah.
It was something I'd buried in me. And so did everybody else. And there was a kid, very successful actor, 10 years younger than me, who I knew. We'd never really talked about it. We'd kind of talked about him being a bit dodgy and left it there. Oh, we don't go there. But this time it all came out.
So how do you think you kind of dealt with that in those 20 years? You say you buried it.
I buried it.
Was there any kind of outward, what's the manifestations of it as such in your life?
Yeah, I think there were.
You just didn't realize
I
it,
could
did
never
you?
hold down a relationship.
Right.
I was always, I was quite, I won't say popular with the girls because that sounds ridiculous, but I like women, and I knew from the experience I wasn't gay. Not that, but one of the reasons I didn't sort of do anything about it, because I didn't want, the press at the time were incredibly homophobic, and I work in drama now. I don't want to. I thought, oh, they're just going to come up with this,
Yeah.
And of course, it's not a gay thing; it's a paedophile thing,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
which is completely different.
Yeah.
I didn't realise. I was mixed up in my mind.
Mm.
I kept it buried, hidden. Tried to deal with it that way. I thought, well, maybe I'll deal with this when my parents die. Because I didn't want them to feel bad.
They didn't know about it, did they?
No,
Right. Yeah.
no, and no.
That's a heavy burden to
It's
carry,
yeah. I
mate.
thought,
Yeah.
well, maybe when my parents pass, I'll be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'm really pleased I got to talk about it with my parents. I got
Okay.
to break the news to them, tell them all about it, and my father and mother were incredibly supportive. They were brilliant. I'm really pleased because, my dad died in 2005, and I remember on his deathbed, I said, look, I'm happy now. I'm at peace.
Mm.
I just got married to the woman I'm still married to. And I wanted him to know, because, we knew he wasn't long for this world. He had, he was getting palliative care for,
Right.
terminal cancer they had. So I was able, one of the really good things about cancer is you can tie things up, I think, with the person.
Yeah.
And I could say, look, Dad, I am happy. And my wife was, kind of being really great with him, and he'd helped me through an incredibly difficult period. And he was there every day. There was a big inquiry with the Children's Commissioner for Wales. One of the first things they did was have a look at this and see how we can stop this. Of course, it still goes on, so I
Mhm.
don't know what good that did, but it re-traumatized me. But I was able to pull my, it was almost like, it was almost like popping a pimple. It was like, right, and carry on with life now, aged what, 35, 36,
Right.
37.
Now, you said you had peace, is what I just heard you say when you went to see your father. What brought you that peace ultimately?
I think people. I think, I think my anger dispelled. Um, I think that I was able to forgive the man,
Mm,
not to excuse what he did, because I think what he did was wrong.
no.
Um, he, I would have liked to have seen some sort of punishment dealt out, but when bef- before could we could have our day in court, he killed himself.
Okay.
So
But the
there was that at the back.
forgiveness,
But I felt like I had to forgive him when he
yeah,
was gone, because I didn't want to carry anger, and I think I was. I think there was an underlying, as well
bound
as
to be.
burying everything, there was anger there. And I think,
Yes.
you know, yeah,
I know a lot of people who carry and don't forgive, and
mm,
this is really powerful what you said, I
yeah,
think, because it's not easy, is it, to forgive someone for something they've done to
no,
you like that. But the people who don't, I always say to them that it's only you it's affecting. The person you're not forgiving isn't affected by that. The forgiveness
yeah,
is more for you to have
yeah.
peace, and you've just said that, haven't
Absolutely.
you?
I
Yeah.
think so, and I think I understand that. I mean, I'm not practicing Christian, but I was brought up, with chapel, as I mentioned earlier, and uh, I understand that from, from a Christian upbringing that I had.
Yeah.
I never rebelled against the Christian upbringing. I just stopped going to church, But there's a lot of my moral compass, my moral understanding of the world comes from that. And I always
Yes.
take the Christian box in when we get the census. Uh, even even though I got some Christian friends, you can't be Christian if you don't go to church. Whatever.
Going to church doesn't make you a Christian,
I
mate.
don't
Believe
think
you
it
me.
does. No, However, I always tick the box. I was, yeah, I'm a Christian.
Mm,
Because
yeah.
culturally and morally, yeah. And I think, as you said, Jesus was a punk rock as somebody, and I'm like, yeah, he was a revolutionary. He was,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and a lot of kids, don't have that upbringing, and punk uh, becomes very important to them. People like Joe Strummer or whatever, or Penny Rimbaud or whatever, become their kind of figures.
Definitely. There's a lot to be. I mean, my personal story, I say, is I became a Christian when I was about 28.
Yeah.
But my stepping stones to Jesus, believe it or not, were the Clash and Bob
Mm.
Marley.
Yeah. You old. Yeah.
The lyrics in their music
Yeah.
are righteous almost. And Marley
Absolutely. I mean,
sings a lot of
reggae.
scripture.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to
Yeah.
it,
And
indeed.
I
Yeah.
always used to think, well, why is it not cool to be from a white chapel background, uh, and but it's all right, it's cool to be a Rasta,
Mm.
or cool to, gospel singing, soul singers. They're all churchgoers. And I go, all right, our songs are a bit doer, but I got to sing, and I did. And I was big on the Eisteddfod in school as well. In fact, around about the time of punk rock, okay, uh, I would always sing in the Eisteddfods, and I could sing on my own. I had the confidence to do that, and I was quite shy. I auditioned for the children's chorus of the Welsh National Opera, and I think in 1976 as well. So it's when punk was just a burgeoning
Right.
thing, London thing, and
You could
I
have.
sang in 2 operas with the Welsh National Opera, and I
Oh,
loved
fair
it.
play.
Yeah, but then my voice broke, and I joined
Right.
a punk band.
Excellent. Okay then. So Ruby Street. Let's begin here at this point.
Yeah,
We lived in a place called Ruby Street, a street in Splot, wasn't it?
yeah,
Adamstown,
yeah.
Splot. Um, Four of us, me, you, Andy, and Ant. We'll name them all. And I lasted 2 months there. I mean, if you've ever seen The Young Ones, it was very much like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think the young ones have got a lot to answer for because
Yeah.
we all had to have our type, our archetype, and I'm pretty sure I was always the Rick character with everyone
Right.
because I was like all for the miners' strike because it was 1984. The miners were out on strike. I
Oh,
was from the
wow. Yeah, of
valleys,
course.
and all that. Yeah, but it was a chaotic.
Mm.
Uh, it was it was hilarious, really. I mean, I'd moved out of my parents' house because I not that I'd fallen out with my parents at all. I just thought I should. I was earning money. By then I was a professional actor.
Yeah.
Hadn't gone to college, and but I auditioned for parts, and I'd got a part in a series with good old Nerys Hughes, who was famous from the Liver Birds, and but she so I was in the cast of that, and I
Mm.
did 2 series of it, and I think I had a bit of money. I was living in a bedsit for a while in Pontcanna, but Andy said, "Let's get a house."
Mm.
So because we were all going to gigs and we were all drinking in the Lex and socialising together. Yeah, and I think me and Andy got it, and then you moved in later, I think.
No, I think the four of us got
Okay,
that house together because
right.
me and Andy were working on getting the place.
I think I left because I moved to London.
Right, you were there a bit. I only lasted 2 months, as I said.
Okay.
It didn't. It wasn't conducive with my immaturity and my love for getting smashed and
Yeah,
trying to hold a job down. So it didn't go
yeah,
so well for me.
yeah.
But you were in district nurse, as you said. But then I remember you moving to London and you got a contract with Eastenders, right? So
Yeah, that
let's.
was a few years later though. I moved to London to go to university,
Oh, okay.
and to kind of I did some more stuff. But I did 2 series of the District Nurse. One when I was still in school, one when we were in Ruby Street, and then um, and then I did another thing when I was in London um, called uh, not Only Two Can Play. There was a movie version of it called Only Two Can Play, but it was called That Uncertain Feeling, based on a Kingsley Amis novel set in Swansea. And like he did Lucky Jim as well, which was based in Swansea. So I went and I did that, and it was great fun. I kind of like this actor's life, and I was doing an acting degree, but I ended up leaving in the end because I got offered a part in EastEnders in 1986.
Yeah, I remember this.
So I was a working actor. Then I started doing all kinds of theatre and stuff, and I had a career then. It was really good.
Yeah.
But when we were in Ruby Street, it was great fun. It really was. We were ripping bongs and hot knifing it and going to gigs and just
Yeah.
generally sitting around watching Cheech and Chong and telling trying to
Oh,
behave
geez,
like him.
young Frankenstein.
Yeah, and there were Woody Allen films and
Yeah.
all kinds of madness. And we had a video player, which was cool because then everyone would come around and watch videos at our
Yeah,
house, and we
that's
used to
right,
get
yeah.
videos from the.
And they were quite rare back then, of course.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was a cool thing to have
Yeah, absolutely, yeah,
a
yeah,
video
yeah,
player, and so it was 24-hour party people really.
yeah. So this whole fame thing, I mean, let's touch on this because in this day and age, everybody wants to be famous as such. Then they have their 15 minutes. And I remember coming up to London to see you when you were in EastEnders. You had a
Yeah,
part as, was it Ian Beale's band manager, wasn't it?
yeah,
And me and Andy came up to see you, and I seem to remember, I mean, it was a while ago, we didn't get left alone. We had packs of young girls following us through the streets. But the one thing that, the kind of attitude towards famous people was we went into a Pizza Hut and we'd had a few pints, I believe. And rather than wait to be seated and do things properly, we ran to the salad bar and got a menu and shoved it full of salad and went back to the table. And the girl came over to kick us out. and she saw you and kind of changed her whole attitude. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. It was in Wood Green, I think.
Right.
Yeah. And
But it's indicative of how people admire people who are on telly and such.
oh,
You
he's
know,
off the
you can get
telly,
away with
and
stuff.
it, yeah. I mean, weirdly, because I had money in my pocket, but I didn't have to pay to go anywhere. I was going to get on everyone's guest list. I couldn't see bands. I had and I made friends with people who worked for the Melody Maker and for the NME. So I just went to loads of gigs,
Yeah,
and I don't think I paid to see many of
yeah,
them. Um, you know, I could, go to nightclubs and hang out with people. I didn't actually like being famous, but I kind of liked the things that came with it.
mhm,
I hate. I was, believe it or not, despite the life I'd chosen for myself, I was really shy, and I'd get quite embarrassed about it, and I'd have to spend if somebody came up to me and talk, I'd have to talk to them. It was like that old punk thing, like Joe Strummer always talked to his fans. So if somebody'd see me on telly, I wouldn't go tell them to F off. I'd be like, yeah, hi, that's really nice. Thank you.
yeah.
And I quite liked it when girls gave me attention. I didn't really take advantage of any of that. But, it was all kind of nice. I was a young man. But I found I found it, the press, I thought, was odd. And I think in 1986, I'd been to a big rap concert. It was when rap um, and hip hop had really taken off big time.
Right.
Um, I went to see a gig in the Hammersmith Odeon. I think Run DMC, Public Enemy, the Beastie Boys, Houdini,
All on the same bill.
all on the same bill.
Wow.
Um, it was incredible.
Yeah,
I had never seen rap, certainly not on that scale, in a live situation. Uh, and I was blown away by it.
yeah.
I think I think that Public Enemy were bottom of the bill. You had to get there early and see the whole thing. And on the tube on the way home, there were a bunch of London skinheads, a different breed to our friendly bald heads in Cardiff, who would you'd go to reggae gigs with and not be racist with.
Yeah,
There were a bunch of, and they recognised me off the telly,
yeah.
and they went, "Oi, mate, you're off the telly, ain't you?" And I'm like, "What? What's it to you?" And they were like, "Oh, right, are you a lefty then?" And I went, "What's that to you? Go on then, tell it." And I was just like, and they'd just been to a National Front meeting, you know, a racist
Yeah.
organisation. Then and I was like, hang about, I've just been in a gig chanting "I'm proud to be black," yo, and that's a fact, yo, and we'd all, and I was a reggae fan. I despise racism, so I went, no, I don't like what you guys stand for. So it turned from a like, skinheads are all right because I know from Cardiff, to they get a bad rap, to actually these are dangerous
Yeah,
gits.
yeah.
And I think it's a different breed maybe in the late 80s or mid to late 80s.
Mhm.
And suddenly the fists started raining in on me, and they'd surrounded me and started punching and kicking me. My mates couldn't do anything about it because, and then they ran off at the next station, and I'm there going, what the heck? And somebody's seen, and the next day, I'm on the front page of the Daily Mirror. There's somebody taking a
It's the mirror,
photograph of
yeah,
me
that
and a
is.
black eye. I had to go into work where I was filming EastEnders, kind of the next day with a big black eye. Now, the ironic thing about this was I'd had a fight in the storyline of EastEnders. I don't know whether you remember, but Wixie, the heartthrob of the series,
Yeah,
was my nemesis. And I love Nick. He was a really good guy.
yeah,
But in the series, we hated each other.
yeah.
I was like, "Oh, Wixie, you're never going to get
You
anywhere with
had
these
quite an
softies here."
arrogant character, didn't you,
Yeah, I
if I
was
remember?
talking
Yeah,
like this. I
yeah,
was like, yeah. Um, so quite easy to punch in the face, I guess. Um, I laugh about it 40 years later. But yeah, so but I'd been having a fight with Wixie.
Right.
And I had a black eye in the in the storyline. However, it was in a different place. It'd already been established. My black eye. So makeup people had to cover up my real black eye, and then put another black eye in a different place for continuity, which was kind of hilarious.
Yeah. I should say, yeah. What else did you go on to do from there? Because I seem to remember you went to, was it abroad somewhere? I can't remember.
Okay, so what EastEnders taught me
Yeah.
was that I didn't want to be famous. I saw no value in being famous, but I did. Um, I really did enjoy, and I wanted to learn how to, the craft of acting. I look back at sort of clips from EastEnders and go, "My God, you were awful," but you were young and lovely, but 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 I wanted to learn the craft, how to do it well. Although I did do quite a lot more television, I tried to get as much theatre work as I could, so I could give the live experience. I really enjoyed that, and I worked for a whole bunch of companies. So I did a lot of stage work, um, and then from then when in the 2000s, after the whole child abuse scandal,
Yeah.
which is what it was, because a lot more people came out of the woodwork than just me
Right.
and my mates. There were loads of us, and after that, I was re-traumatized by that, and I really didn't want to be on stage much anymore. Although I did do a little bit, so I tried to do other things. I thought I'd get into directing, and I'd get into you know, teaching as well, because I want to pass on the skills that I had, because I really took it quite seriously when I was on stage. I felt, because my life could be reasonably chaotic. Um, However, when I was on stage and when I felt centered, and I felt very, uh, I felt I was doing something really well. I felt disciplined. I felt that. I could come off stage and think that's great.
Mm.
Um, uh, and it was a beautiful thing, I think,
I heard a lot of people, famous people, saying that they adopt a different kind of persona on stage.
Oh, yeah, I mean, but you build a character,
Yeah.
you're not being you, and it's not about pretending. Although when you start acting, yeah, you do, but you take certain aspects of yourself and then you push it in to another character.
Right.
So I played. I enjoyed playing baddies quite a lot. Uh, it was great. I remember I played the Roman Emperor Caligula once.
Really?
Yeah,
That must have been
it
interesting
was very
if you
interesting.
know his
He's
story.
psychopath,
Yeah, right.
and
Yeah.
it was great
Yeah.
because you get to indulge in the dark side. You don't
Oh,
want to be
yeah.
like that in real life, but you get to, I guess, you get to identify. We go, well, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Because baddies don't think they're bad.
What was that, a stage play?
Yeah, it's a stage play. Albert Camus' Caligula.
Right.
The yeah, the French existentialist writer, famous for The Outsider, which influenced the Cure song "Killing an Arab."
Okay.
There we are. Uh, uh, and uh, yeah, you get to inhabit someone for an hour or two on stage and be there. Um, mm, yeah, and I kind of liked playing those bad wrong-uns. It was
Right,
fun.
okay. And you were abroad somewhere. I can't think what
Yeah,
country now.
well, I did a lot of work abroad. I mean, what's really great about theatre work is that if you might not earn a lot of money, but you might get some interesting tours. So I worked all around England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Poland, France, uh, and when I decided I wanted to be a director and make theatre. A lot of opportunities came my way, and I spent a lot of time after the Balkans War. I went to Kosovo a
That's
lot.
it. Yeah.
Um, and Kosovo then still has a United Nations peacekeeping force there. The United Nations mission in Kosovo, UNMIK, there were tanks on the street. There were military there. I mean, I'd seen military there because I'd performed in Belfast
Right.
round about the time of the Good Friday Agreement, but there were still troops on the street. There were still
Yeah.
people throwing
Mm.
stuff at police and soldiers. There were still checkpoints.
Mm.
You know, there were still massive walls in the Ardoyne district of Belfast. You know, you'd seen this. It's strange. I digress. I did a lot of work in Ireland, and there was one play. It was a one-man play that I did uh, in the late 90s up to about 2000. Did really well on the festival circuit. The Edinburgh Festival did really well, and we toured Ireland with it. Won best production prize at the Dublin Festival, which was a big deal. You know, I was the only person in the cast. Um, and so we went back and we toured Ireland again. And we spent a week in Belfast. It's the only time I've ever been to Northern Ireland. Belfast is an amazing place,
Mm.
really interesting. And we were in Belfast's only Irish language art centre and school. I guess it's kind of where Kneecap must have gone,
Right.
because and yeah, but it was really, really odd going from the Republic of Ireland, which is like being in a European country. We were not spending pounds. It was a fortune to phone home because there were only pay phones at the time. You had
Yeah.
to put loads of coins in just to say, I'm all right, yeah, I'm fine, I'll be back in a week or two. Then you get across the border into Northern Ireland, and suddenly the road signs look like British road signs. The phones are just regular price, 10 pence. Got me 5 minutes or whatever. Could have a proper conversation on the phone. But the really weird thing was there were troops on the street.
Yeah.
It was like occupied Britain. And it was shocking,
Mm.
you know, really shocking. And, but, you know, with our hosts, we said, take us on a tour of the Troubles then. We went to Ian Paisley's church. We went to the Irish Parliament, and we went. I visited, but really touching actually. Visited Bobby Sands' grave, and the guys who had been put in prison in Long Kesh and had starved themselves to death because they wanted political status
Mm.
as Irish prisoners, and it was terrible what they went through, but their commitment was incredible. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the IRA at all, but you see but he gives you an understanding of why these things happen, um, and I'm going visiting Bobby Sands' grave, who died in 1981, uh, and um, and seeing how young these guys were.
Right.
You know, they were teenagers, a lot of them.
Wow.
And it really hit me hard, really. You know, it's kind of and but so I found it interesting, but you know, it was a different Britain. You know, I'd spent
Yeah.
time.
Very much.
You know, I'd spent time in the north of England, in Scotland, in all the cities, in London, obviously, but going to Belfast was a revelation,
Yeah.
and the way people talked offhand about the violence committed there. I remember saying to one of our guys, Paul, it was a few years ago actually, he was in Pontypridd. I said to Paul, Paul, mate, all this talk of violence, the way you talk about it, it's just not natural. You know, it's really alien to me. And the next day he came up to me and says, you're right, Gareth. It's not natural, is it?
No.
You're going off to Galway in the Republic next for a week. I said, we are. Can I hitch a lift with you? and that's a terrible Northern Irish accent, but you
Better
know.
than mine.
So we took Paul to Galway, which is one of the most laid back cities I've ever been to.
Galway.
Galway. Have you been to Galway?
No.
Oh, totally. West coast of Ireland, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, and so he spent a few days with us in the West coast of Ireland in a very laid back kind of place. But yeah, but after the war in the Balkans, I go fast forward. I spent a few months actually, over 2 or 3 years in Kosovo. Made some amazing friends. And you know, I directed 2 or 3 plays in Albanian because they were Albanian Kosovos, um, uh, and they were flying the Albanian flag as their flag. It wasn't an official country, but um, it was still officially part of Serbia. Um, but the war was between the Albanian Kosovos and the Serbs, so they didn't have, and culturally my Albanian Kosovo friends were Muslims, and they were a majority there, and most of the towns were that, you know, they were very liberal Muslims. We'd have a beer.
Right.
They really liked America as well because because Clinton bombed Serbia to stop the war,
Okay.
you know, and I went, all right. But they really they really liked Americans. They were the kind of, and you know, and this is post 9/11 when in our heads we think, oh yeah, Muslims just hate America, but they were like, oh, they were moaning about the Saudis coming over building mosques for them. They're saying, blimey, and they were more they were more inclined to like, you know, Israelis coming over and just helping,
Right.
you know, or kind of you know, the Western people. They were all the Saudis do is build these shiny mosques. Have you seen them? I'm going, yeah, they're quite nice. Well, they're not ours. But you know, but culturally, they were they were Muslims, and it's like me culturally, I'm a Christian,
Yeah,
so
of
it's
course.
kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
we I said, all right.
Mm.
So you know, and I'm still friends with, you know, certainly, you know, I got friends like Yeton, we who I stay with sometimes, or you know, and they're really, I that was a really cool experience
Yeah, I'm sure.
because you would not go to Kosovo on your holidays. You'd go to, and I had been to Croatia on my holidays,
Yeah.
and these days Albania and Saranda is quite a fashionable place to go
Yeah.
for your holidays. It's beautiful and lovely,
Mm.
but Kosovo's a landlocked place which had been, well, really, even in the old Yugoslavia, it had been neglected by the Soviet thing. We'd go to Skopje, which is down in, I think it's called North Macedonia. It used to be called Macedonia then.
Yeah.
We'd go to Macedonia. I go, come on, let's go to Macedonia for the weekend. We go to Skopje, which is a beautiful, big old Soviet squares. You get back to Pristina in Kosovo, and you know, and I think everyone would agree with me. It was a pretty shitty city, to misquote Twin Town. It was. It didn't look very nice. You know, it had no infrastructure, uh, but really warm and really wonderful. And I would go back there like that. You know, although, you know, when I travel abroad these days, I like Mallorca or Ibiza or
Right.
Thailand.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been through another traumatic experience, and I didn't know about this at the time. I remember seeing a post, probably about a year or so ago now,
Yeah.
on social media
Yeah.
of you sitting in a hospital bed,
Yeah.
and I thought, what? What happened to you there exactly?
Okay, so I didn't want to go on about it on social media, but 3.5 years ago, or just over 3 years ago, actually, it's not quite. I went for a routine colonoscopy um, that you're offered when you get to a certain age. These days,
Yes.
it's a lot younger, but
Yeah.
then it was 58. So I was 58 years old. I had a letter from the doctor saying, have a, send a sample of your poo back. I went, all right, because my father had died of a cancer that he shouldn't have died of. I was always getting checked for prostate cancer because I got piles,
Right.
and there was quite often blood on my toilet paper, and the doctor going, no, it's nothing to worry about, nothing to worry about. But a friend of mine, or two friends of mine, younger than me, had died of bowel cancer, um, and uh, and I noticed the blood was a little bit different. So I sent this poo sample back straight away, more or less. Um, and then I had a colonoscopy, and then they sit you down in a room with a bunch of people going, okay, yeah, we've had a look at this. There's a lot going on in your large intestine. Um, there's sometimes with a few polyps in there, little growths, anything, and if you got little amount, 2 or 3 of them, we'll cut them out, snip them out, as it was. If you got a lot in there, maybe 10 of them, we'll get you back in, put you under anaesthetic and chop them out, give you but you got about 50 in there, Gareth. Oh yeah, and at least one of them is cancer, and that's how they broke it to me.
Mm.
My wife's there, and I'm sat there, and I'm like, oh, it's really not what you want to hear.
No.
Certainly not when, you know, two friends in their 40s had died of cancer,
Yeah.
you know, um, fairly recently. And I'm like, okay, thinking to myself. And there was another friend of mine who actually had cancer, who was undergoing chemotherapy. I was on the phone to him. He said, you're going to be all right. He said, well, yeah, they're going to find nothing in you. And so but they did find something in me. Um, and it was cancer in my anus. So they decided that what they were going to do, and the scariest 10 days of my life was while they decided what to do with me. They said, right, you're going to have chemotherapy, then you're going to have radiotherapy, and if that works, we're going to whip your large intestine out and give you a stoma. A stoma is because you've got no anus anymore. You can't go to the toilet like normal people. You've got a bag stuck to you, and that you have to empty that a few times a day.
Mm.
Fair enough. And I'm like, okay. And, all the while I felt very kind of positive about the whole thing. I thought, okay, you just give yourself over to people who know better than you.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so the next year or so of my life, year and a half of my life actually, was being treated and having an operation, recovering from my operation. And yeah, I posted up when I was in hospital. I went, all right, here we go. I'm going to tell everyone about it now. No, a lot of my friends knew, and I had old school friends would take me to Velindre, which is an amazing place, a cancer hospital in Cardiff.
Mhm.
Absolutely amazing.
Mm.
One of those places, and I'd been to see my dad there and that, but that was all of it. Oof. But, you know, this place for me was really good. You'd sit around, everyone's quite chirpy in there.
Yeah.
Even, people who were literally on death's door.
Yeah.
They were
It is
having a chat with
amazing.
people,
Yeah.
whatever. You'd be having your chemotherapy, you sit around with a thing in your arm
Yeah.
on a bed for a few hours, chatting to everyone. The nurses are great. And you get really posh people and homeless people all in the same boat.
Disease is no respecter of person, right?
No.
No.
So it was, and people were joking and laughing, and their families would be coming in, but yeah, it was a serious side to it, of course. And if you didn't want to, you could just put some headphones on and listen to music. But I found it really nice to chat to people, you know. And then I'd come home for 3 days with a thing in my arm and a bottle of chemo drugs, and I'd be lying here uh, with my dog on me. He's buggered off now. I
Yeah.
was hoping to get him in here, but he's still alive. I don't mean buggered off in that way. He's in the house, but I'd be lying here, dog on me, and a mate I'd get lots of visitors, and part of me really enjoyed. Apart from the fact I felt dreadful.
Yeah.
Like the chemo drugs are awful.
Oh, it's horrible.
I mean, your wife died of
Yeah, that's
cancer,
right.
and
Well, she didn't go through chemo,
Right.
because it was straight out that there's no cure for this.
right,
They did try a new kind of, what do you call it, 1-1 trial towards the end of her life. But you never know if you're having a placebo or the real thing. Anyway, the
yeah,
one thing I remember about that, and it's a bit of a grim subject, but look, cancer
Hey.
and disease is rife, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
was there a point where you're thinking, I'm going to die here?
Well, you're face to face with the Grim Reaper, so yeah.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life, I wasn't, 18 anymore.
Yes.
I think 19 was my ideal age when we were in Ruby Street. I loved being 19. I
Yeah.
felt free. I was free of the tyranny of school. I
Yeah.
was living a life I wanted to live.
Yeah.
I had to make my own rules. I was going to see as many bands as I wanted to see,
Mm.
and that. But I was living life on my own terms. And for most of my life, I lived life light. But all of a sudden, I realised this could all come to an end. I've got to an age, I was 58, 59, and I got to an age where, where friends had started dying,
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
where life was not something that went on forever,
Yeah.
and that I might be, dying soon. It made me very kind of aware of my mortality, but also aware of all the love that was given to me.
Yes.
Old friends from school were coming. You came to visit me when I was recovering from my operation.
Mm.
But I'd be lying here during the summer of chemotherapy, and I'd feel terrible, but in my spirit was good,
Mm.
and and then I recovered from that. I tried to go back to work, which was great, and then I started the radiotherapy, which wasn't as I didn't feel as sick as I did on the chemo, but I was still on chemo tablets by then, but it was tiring,
Mm.
and that was I'd go in every day to the hospital, and I'd be my groin, my butt was zapped, and then when I'd recovered from all of that, I had that every day for 5 weeks. The chemotherapy went on for months, but that was once a fortnight. Um, and yeah, and all the while I'm like, well, they're treating me, but you become very aware of stuff, of
Like your mortality, I suppose.
mortality. That this life is a gift, and that and I'd reflect on my life quite a lot. Now, weirdly, I quite enjoyed lockdown.
Okay.
You know, where I was I had a nice, well, I got a nice garden.
Were you actually all through lockdown then?
No, no,
No,
no,
this was after,
no.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Lockdown, I think, helped me cope with my cancer treatment, because to me it was quite similar. I couldn't go out and
Oh,
uh,
got you.
be social.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time here in this garden.
Yeah.
I all right, I wasn't doing the mad body coach. Because during lockdown, I turned my front room or turned my living room into a gym. I couldn't do that when I was on chemotherapy.
It's better
Just
than the
lie
pub,
about.
right?
Yeah, but they were yeah, I get beer deliveries though. And, yeah, and, yeah, and I rediscovered weed as well.
Okay.
But I learned how to make edibles, uh,
Right.
but, that helped me through chemotherapy, weirdly. I was like, "Oh," and it got rid of the nausea, and it helped me sleep, so, you know.
I remember you doing a kind of DJ thing online at the time because Andy had just died, and I hooked up to it a few times. You were doing
Yeah.
an online DJ set, weren't
Yeah,
you?
it was stuff to do, stuff to connect with people.
Yeah.
You got to try lots of things out in lockdown, and you know, I I strangely enjoyed lockdown, although I had no money because I was a self-employed person.
Yeah.
I spent all my money on trying to keep. I think I had 250 quid a week, a month, from a 0 hour job I was doing. They said, "Oh, we'll give you that because you've done so much work for us."
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
like, "All right." Um, it was, it was, but I think my cancer treatment, that prepared me for my cancer treatment. And then, but the worst part of it was, I'd gone back to work. I tried to get fit again after my radiotherapy, and then and then I went and had my ileostomy, which means my large intestine was taken out, and they pulled a bit of my small intestine. I think it poked through my stomach, which is a stoma, and they put a bag on me. I'm not going to show you, but it's
No, no.
there. And I've now developed a massive hernia around that, a
Okay.
peristomal,
Yeah.
para, yeah, around it. I've got a massive lump, which doesn't hurt, and I used to hate it, and I was like, oh my goodness me, what's going on? This is me for the rest of my life. How depressing! I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Um, and I couldn't walk because my surgery had been. They'd removed my rectum, uh, and and uh, the whole recovery process was awful. So people could come and see me again, but that was in the winter, so I would be indoors lying on my sofa there. Would people come to see me, and it was great. People from work would pop in. You popped in. My mates would pop in, and you know, it's all right. Listen to a lot of music,
Mm.
um, and then I was on painkillers. Weed helped me get off painkillers, to be honest, because I was addicted to codeine.
Right. Okay.
But I remember telling my nurse, I need to get off the codeine. She says, so I tried to get off the codeine at one point, and I couldn't walk. And my stoma nurse said, get back on the codeine, Gareth. You can't walk. I said, but I don't want to be addicted to it. And she said, we'll deal with that later on. And I dealt with it myself by reducing my thing. And at night, and I know it's sort of not legal and that, but I said these edible weed things that I made myself, and I'd have those before I went to bed. So I wasn't taking it to, not there's anything wrong with it. I wasn't taking it for a, I was taking it for medicinal purposes
Yeah.
because there's a whole community of people who would actually say, don't go on chemotherapy, have this really strong weed or this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And I went, well, I'm having the chemotherapy, mate,
Mm.
but I'll have the weed as well. And I don't know how much the weed helped me, but it probably did, and it certainly helped mentally because but the best time was get it during chemotherapy, stopped me feeling nauseous, helped me sleep, but then um, kind of uh, got me off painkillers because I could wake in the middle of the night and I wouldn't be shaking and hurting and mind racing because I would just be calm and I could drift back into sleep. And after a week uh, of withdrawals, or and they were nasty withdrawals, I started to feel normal again. So I was off the painkillers, and I could go back to work. And so fitness. I used to be really fit when I was like 40. I was a runner. I did CrossFit. I did crazy gym workouts. I couldn't do that when I was ill. Um, but I walk a lot now. And maybe I'll get back to going to the gym, but I won't be able to do the abdominal stuff
Mm.
because my abdominal wall's been cut through, and that. But hey, but back to, I hated it so much until I kind of trained myself to think, look, it's a big traumatic thing. You know, you insides have been ripped out. You've had major surgery.
Jeez, yeah.
You know, you need to thank whatever, the goodness of people, nature, you know, God or whatever, that you've survived this, and it's given me a new purpose in life. Um, I've got friends going through bad things at the moment, and what you've got, I think, in this world, and I'm going to get philosophical now.
Mm.
What you've got is the moment. What you've got is now. You are who you've been, and hopefully you'll have tomorrow, but or next year, or whatever. But right now is what you've got, and right now can be a great thing, and that's what I held on to when I thought, you know,
Would you say, though, that I mean, listening is fascinating to what you're saying, because the reason I'm doing this is because it's a result, really, in part, to my life and the people I've known all my life.
yeah, yeah,
That, I'm not pulling on strangers to do these
yeah,
talks.
yeah,
You're someone I've known for 43 years,
yeah,
and the other people I'm sitting with, and that's what you're saying. That right now is the moment, and you've got the resources that you built up during your life,
yeah,
like your friends,
yeah,
are such
yeah,
a big part of
yeah,
that, aren't they? Yeah,
yeah. Friends, family, but strangers can be really, um, really generous and really wonderful, and you can open up to strangers
yeah.
sometimes. You know, the nursing staff, all the staff at Valindra are incredible,
Yeah, I've
really good. You
experienced it.
know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know, and in the past, to cope with the trauma of school,
Mm.
I had therapy, um, and I see the value in all of that, and I see the and we hear a lot, you know, about the badness of humanity. You know, we see the conflict, we see you know, evil or whatever um, going on, but I prefer to see goodness and kindness and
And you
the
project that from your life. Because the
absolutely.
truth is, our friends were strangers before they were our friends, right?
You're absolutely right. You know, we see something in somebody, and there's a reason you know, you find your tribe. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, after school, I was sort of in bits. Although I wanted to be an actor and I was started to get acting work, I figured that I wanted to find my tribe. You
Yeah.
know, and part of going to Lexington was all these punk rockers down there who go to the same gigs as you, who
Absolutely.
wanted music,
Yeah.
listen to the same music as you, just
Mm.
hang out, do stuff. And sure, Ruby Street was a bit chaotic and crazy, but we forged, you know, kind of friendships and attitudes that kind of that we chose, and I think that's good. And we fell in, you know, superficially, and went, oh, falling in with a bad crowd there, you know, because you know we were ripping bongs and
Doing terrible things,
do,
really.
we weren't doing bad. We weren't
Not
bad to
crime, so
people. We
much
weren't.
crime.
Yeah, we weren't particular. Well, no, we weren't
To
breaking.
ourselves,
Yeah,
right? That's what the terrible
yeah,
things were.
and we were, you know, we were doing our own thing, but you know, maybe parents wouldn't approve. But hey, that was we learned to live our own way, and we found our tribe and stuff, and you know, it was good that you know, and I think you reap that, you know, later on in life. You know, you find people who are willing to give you time and love, and I
Yeah.
think, and that um, helps with you giving out kindness. If you're shown
Yes.
kindness, then
Yeah.
you're going to be
Mhm.
more inclined to give kindness out. I'm lucky I had a good home. I had love from my
Yeah.
parents,
Yeah.
you
Same.
know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there was a jit, you know, you know, it was wobbly in school because I was taken advantage of by you know, a man who, well, he felt he could get away with that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But, you know, and that brought a bunch of anger to me. But I've been able to get rid of that, to not feel angry about that anymore, put it down to life. People were really great to me when I came out about it all, and the same with, with cancer. And I feel that I feel almost duty bound to do something about it. I mean, I stopped being an actor maybe about 15 years ago, but I'm doing a show in the summer. Somebody offered me a show, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to say yes to this. It's only a 3-week, 2-performance kind of thing, but I get to work with some great actors on a nice stage. So I'm going to do that. But what I was thinking is, before then, I really need to write about this and perform, a story based on, me, uh, and my experiences, but the wonderful people that supported me throughout this. Because you know, I feel that I am part of a community, whether it be my Welsh speaking community, which is very strong and been very supportive, my punk rock community, my music community, my DJing community. Um, I feel like I do feel part of something. And yeah, and at my age, I'm not going to run around. Although I still perform with my punk rock group that I started when I was 14 and 15. I've no real anger. Although I look at the songs that we wrote when we were 14, 15, they're not particularly angry. They're getting off with girls. Yeah. There's one about a serial killer that I wrote after watching The Shining. So the Where's Johnny
Okay,
scene.
yeah,
I thought, oh, that's great, and it's first person, and a lot of people go, that's pretty misogynist, because the song's called "I'm Going to Kill My Girlfriend Tonight,"
okay.
and my girlfriends, my female friends, would always sit down during that song. We're not dancing to that song. But I thought, no, it's just a horror film. I'm just put the actor and me wanted to see things from the character in The Shining.
Okay.
But yeah, but there's songs about driving spaceships. It's all pretty
Sci-fi.
teenage stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
sci-fi,
yeah,
horror,
yeah.
and
Murder
sex. Yeah.
and sex. Yeah, okay.
Or the perception of, a 15-year-old virgin's idea of sex.
Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing that in your next production. And for now, Gareth, thanks for coming on and sharing with us. Diolch yn fawr.
Croeso. Diolch yn fawr I ti.